Let's pursue our knowledge progression on doing management research. The next topic is about risk management. We have already talked about some of these ideas around the risk of the research, but I felt it was a good idea to bring together the main risks that you are facing when you are doing your EDBA. And there are a few. The first one is around theory. And even though it's less the case for an executive DBA, I mean, you are asked for a lesser contribution in terms of theory. You will contribute to practice. But in terms of theoretical contribution, there's less weight on this than for a PhD or even a DBA. That wouldn't be an executive DBA. But, I mean, there's still expectation there. So you want to really connect with your literature review and refer back to the seed on the literature review. One big risk is that you never finished. One of my very dear friends started a PhD at the same time that I did, and that was a long, long time ago. And as we talk, he still hasn't finished. Well, he gave up actually. But that's because it was too broad. He was trying to accumulate and to put more and more things and different concepts and different theories. And there's always a new angle. You can't put everything in your PhD. And you know what? There are things that you will have read, that you will have loved, and that you will have to drop. So don't go too broad. Actually, your objective in the literature should be to narrow it down. You should try, because you only have 3 years and you want to answer to a precise question. So you should try to block things out. We worked, for instance, recently on identity. And identity is such a huge box. I mean, if you start talking about identity, you can have thousands and thousands of references. So we had to narrow it down. It couldn't fit in a single paper. And we managed to say, okay, well, we put a general definition for identity, but then we moved to say, okay, we are only interested in narrative approach to identity, which all of a sudden dropped it to something completely manageable. So you want that. You want it to be manageable. You want to really have a lit review that's narrow enough so that you will actually finish your dissertation in the right time. You don't want it too narrow because you still want to capture what's relevant to your topic. So, listen to what you are being told, get some feedback, try to present to your colleagues, use the opportunity when you have a seminar with somebody coming to the DBA to actually enrich your approach. But don't panic. When somebody tells you, oh, you have to look at this, absolutely. Well, you only do it if you think it's justified. So if somebody says that, it's probably that it makes sense to a degree. What can you do with that? Well, you can say, okay, it's really important. It's really essential for my topic. I'll read the 200 extra references and I put them in. Fair enough. But you can also say, okay, well, how do I manage it? And then you are back to your first question. How do I make sure that I acknowledge the fact that this literature exists, but I don't include it, right? So you want to be neither too narrow nor too broad. Keep it slim. Keep it, it's lean. You want only what's relevant to your topic, but all that's relevant to your topic. If you discard something, explain why. Explain that it's legitimate that you wouldn't take that. Don't miss the gray literature, because the gray literature is really anything that's not published in books or journal articles. Things that could be presented at conferences or in working papers. That's important because that's the precursor of what will happen. If you find somebody who's already publishing working papers today on your topic, it's likely that by the time you have finished your dissertation, they might have a paper out. And then all your novelty is gone. So try to be one step ahead and look at the gray literature. And eventually, the most important in terms of theory is find the right gap, find a real gap, make sure. And that's how you do it. You do it by really drafting a lit review that includes everything that's relevant, so that you are sure that there isn't something that really could provide the explanation or is already there in terms of knowledge on your topic. So that's the first one. The second one is connected to, I've already talked a bit about that, is about feedback. It's about managing feedback. Get feedback as often as you can. You come to a seminar, to the DBA, you have an exchange with a professor, get the feedback. Get feedback from your supervisor, from your future panel. Take opportunities to present. And that can be maybe participating to an academic conference, to a peer-reviewed conference, because that will provide you some good feedback. But always deal with feedback with caution. Don't try to accommodate everything. If you don't agree with something, don't block everything out. You'll be working a lot. When somebody tells you, I don't agree, I don't like your project, there's something wrong, it's quite confronting. And, it's hard to take. Well, get used to it, because that's probably the best advice you'll ever get when somebody tells you, well, I don't agree with that. Or, it's actually giving you a service, because it means it helps you to prepare your argument. So it might be that the comment, you find it irrelevant the first time somebody tells it to you. And if it happens only once and you really feel it's irrelevant, why not? But very often, when somebody makes a comment, there's a reason behind it. So try to understand why. Maybe they are wrong about the comment they make, but it might hide something that's a real problem for the PhD. So instead of being all defensive, the way to answer to comments is to think about, how can I further develop my project so that nobody else will ever do that comment again if it's a negative comment. So use the feedback to progress, to understand what are the limitations of your project. And if you feel, there's a good reason why you shouldn't accept the comment, well, build your argument in the dissertation. Make sure all the comments that you have had are already addressed, and discuss that with your supervisor. So it means, you have to find the right balance between standing by your ideas. It's your project, but don't be stubborn. Don't be defensive. You have to convince your public. It's not them who have to convince you. So if they make a comment, you have to understand how you prevent this comment from reoccurring. Maybe it's because you gave the wrong impression. Maybe it's because there's something that could be clearer when you present your argument. Well, make sure you do. Make sure you use it for improvement, even if it's, sometimes not very nice to receive. About the field research, it's very important, to not to miss that opportunity. So you are in a privileged situation. Most of you will access to a specific setting where you can conduct your research, but maybe you'll still have to do more, to gain more interviews, to connect with people. So plan it in advance, especially if you want to be introduced or to meet with people you're not in contact with on a day-to-day basis. So depending on what you want to do, find the right setting. Try to start to work on the connection. You can start preliminary research early to get ideas, to exchange on your ideas, to have a feel of potential results, maybe to reorient your lit review into areas that are interesting. And you have to be opportunistic. If there is, if you want to study change management and they are starting something in your company, well, you have to stop right now. You have to start right now. It has to start. So even if you're not fully ready, well, start to collect data, whatever you can. But unless it's a unique opportunity, if you want to limit your risk, you have to delay the start until your research question is, fully operationalized. If you have a full access, maybe you can start a bit earlier. But you take the risk of collecting data and having to redo it again if your research question is not fully established. So my advice would be, yes, launch some exploratory interviews, still record them so that you can use them in the future. But if you start too early, beware of the risk of collecting data a first time and then they won't fit with your research objective, they won't fit with your gap, and you have to do it again. So it's all about finding the right balance, being opportunistic but then not starting too early. Another risk is around publications. Well, not all of you will want to publish. Even though the executive DBA should be publishable in a form or another, that's the type of level we want you to reach. And there are good reasons for trying to publish things. The first thing is, well, it will interest, your supervisor will be interested in publishing, in working with you on publication, maybe co-publishing with you. You can get feedback because you submit it to a journal or to a conference, and that's good feedback. If some of you, and some in the past have started with a DBA and then did a PhD and went into an academic career, well, that's definitely a must and an asset. So if you want to do that, you have to publish. So to get an academic job, there's no way around it. But a lot of you will continue in business. So, what type of publication, how do we do it? It should be part of your reflection, of your thinking. A format where you have a collection of papers can be an advantage because you slice it in different sections that can each be published. So if you want to have it published, which is for academic career but also for impact, people will read it if it's published. It might be a good idea to have it sliced in article, or to already have it in the format of a book. But then you have to find the right balance. You want to finish your DBA, but you might want to have it published because that's what you want for yourself, for your company, for the impact it will generate. So balance the two. Maybe you might be ready to submit, have something that is close to publication, but then you fine-tune it later. So sometimes it can be problematic to try to publish things as you write. So it's, again, finding the right balance depending on your objectives. The publication will give you impact, will give you a potential for academic career, but it's a barrier. It's harder than writing a simple dissertation. That's it about this section. Next section will be about specific risk, and that's about managing the relationship with your supervisor, plagiarism. So see you in the next knowledge seed.